Boy, we have another call on the line I want to jump to. I know we're running a little late on time. We have Josh, who is him from Florida. Josh, your note says that you'd like to talk about the correlation between religious beliefs and their jobs. So people's jobs, I assume people's religious beliefs and their jobs. For instance, a lot of engineers are atheists, but doctors are more likely to be theistic. I'm actually going to call into question your first premise that a lot of engineers are atheists. I don't know what you mean by a lot. So, for example, anytime you see these letters about intelligent design signed by 1,000 scientists, right? And you look at their background, the vast majority of the people who signed this thing that says, hey, there's evidence for intelligent design, they're all engineers. So actually the engineer mindset tends to prompt you to see design in places, which tends to prompt you to believe in intelligent design. So I have evidence that it's not a lot, or at least amongst the professions that would be called scientists in these letters that go around every once in a while, engineers are overwhelmingly the most vulnerable to being to believing things that way. But maybe I'm getting ahead of the curve. Josh, please do tell me what your argument is.
Yeah, so I'm agnostic. I'm actually lean mostly towards atheism, unless someone could present some sort of scientific, testable evidence to convince me otherwise. I'm always open to seeing that and believing it when it's presented. My thing that I've noticed is, like psychologists, if you look up the American Academy of Sciences, they did a study that 93% identified as atheist or agnostic. Also, a lot of biologists are like 61% in some studies came back as non-believers. But we rely so heavily on the medical industry to save our life. If you're in a car accident, it doesn't matter what you believe in, you're going to go to the hospital and somebody there that's a doctor is going to be responsible for saving your life. I look at religion and non-religion believers as sort of data analysts. You know, you're given data, which is all these different religions, and you're asked to analyze them. And everyone's pretty much a data analyst. Are you able to come up with a logical explanation with all this data, or do you get dumbfounded and you pick data that doesn't make sense to hold on to? And so why are we, relying our life and our health on a large majority of doctors when questioned came back as being theist, which in my opinion would then become bad data analyst?
Gotcha.
So
I think, John, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. My initial response, Josh, I understand what you're going, Josh. My initial response, I think, if I understand what you're pointing out is, hey, why do we go see doctors when some percentage of them are theistic, right? My first response is, I don't care because it has to do with an engineering job, fixing the body. If it were a psychiatrist, there are entire organizations who are like, hey, I think it's called the Secular Therapy Project or something like that actually push back against, going to see somebody who's a theist if you are not a theistic patient, where it matters, with processing your life, processing beliefs and understanding. So that's my first response. My second response is people who are religious tend to, and are professionals, tend to segregate religious claims off into one section of their brain. Francis Collins is a perfect example. He was the leader of the Human Genome Project, the first team to sequence the whole human genome, like amazing biologist, head of the NIH for years, right? Scientist. His quote is, if there were no other evidence for evolution other than the genetic record, evolution would be overwhelmingly proved true. So he is a scientist, yet he is also an evangelical Christian. He tells a story about, hey, I was out in the woods and I saw a river that was frozen into 3 parts and it reminded me of the Trinity of the God, and I dropped on my knees and I had this spiritual experience, and he became what he now describes as a Christian. But he is an eminent scientist who I would trust with telling me anything about genetics or evolution or anything along those lines. So I think that's my point, is you can be both. And you're not crazy if you're religious. You're just wrong about some things. What are your thoughts, John? Do you run into, we need to identify that I may have slandered John because he is the Godless Engineer, and I badmouthed engineers as possibly being more vulnerable to seeing design in places. So I apologize, John. But what are your thoughts?
No, it's fine. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that as long as, your religious belief doesn't interfere with, your professional life, I think that there's no like conflict of interest there. Like, I don't see why it matters if, most doctors believe in God or whatever. I think that I'm from North Alabama. So like I'm regularly around a lot of people that are incredibly smart. They have multiple PhDs. They believe in God. I feel like people have, especially people that are indoctrinated early into a religious faith, are masterful at compartmentalizing. They can compartmentalize their religious belief and separate it from their more analytical belief side, and they can definitely still operate like professionally without having to like introduce their own religious beliefs into it. And so I think that like let's say doctors are more religious. They probably experience a lot of things that they can't understand or they can't explain necessarily. And so the only thing that they can do is say, oh, well, God did it. I mean, honestly, that's not really a sound way to argue. But
no, you can make up other explanations too. Like I am lucky enough to be friends with a lot of professionals, a good number of whom are physicians. And I would categorize them as very empathetic, caring people. So you could say, hey, is there a correlation? But maybe the correlation is not between doctor and religion. Maybe it's between people who grew up just naturally being more empathetic in religion because they sense a connectedness, or who knows? But I think your point's perfectly valid, John. I didn't mean to interrupt there, but there's all sorts of causalities we may not understand. That it's a common cause. It's not a direct correlation. We are empathetic, so we are more religious, or we are empathetic, so we're more likely to be doctors.
Right. Yeah. Correlation does not equal causation.
Yeah. Good point. That's a good way to summarize it. So I don't know if that answers any sort of questions you had, Josh. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I gather all that. My whole thought process was, I guess, just like the whole running back to data analysis is like you have all the data, which is all the different religions, and you're obviously went to medical school and all that, so you're able to study data and reciprocate it to pass the tests. So you get all this data, and I guess if you've come up with the answer being, I'm going to follow XYZ religion versus being agnostic or atheist, given all this information, I'm coming up that me being atheist and agnostic, you have chosen the wrong data set. So I can't value you as
I don't think I get where you're going, but I don't think people have chosen the wrong data set. And I think, but maybe you mean you have given weight to certain evidence where you haven't, or something along those lines, because the data that you're talking about is often different categories of data, right? We've got, let's take the Francis Collins one, right? He gets data in the form of evidence of genetic sequencing. What are the actual, I forget what they're called, the GATCs in the DNA, I forget, but what are the actual letters that show up when we do this? And if I change one, what is the resulting behavior I see in the animal where I've changed it? Oh, look, I can make cats glow. Wow. Okay. So I reproduce that. And so now we know what this sequence does in this particular genome. That's one type of data. And then he goes in the forest, has a hike, and has this overwhelming feeling of belonging or higher power or whatever. That's another type of data. He's really good at analyzing the first, in my worldview. I think he's really good at analyzing the first, but I think he misattributed the cause of that feeling that he had when he was out in the woods. And maybe there's a deeper story. We're only hearing like what he wrote about in his book, but it's a different type of data, and he's just bad at analyzing that data in my worldview, and in his worldview, maybe I'm bad at analyzing my data when I have these feelings of happiness and music brings me to tears when I go see Wicked or something like that, right? So I don't think we're picking data sets. We are giving different data sets weights, and we're interpreting data. Do you agree with that, Josh? Oh, sorry, I had you on mute. Hold on, give me a second. Go ahead, Josh.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I think my whole thing is, let's just say different religions have different interpretations of creationism, where none of them seem to completely align with our scientific explanation of Darwinian evolution and Big Bang and all those different things. So if you've strongly chosen to believe the Christian, Catholic, or any of those Muslim forms of creationism as the one to hold on to as true, and that means you disbelieve the scientific explanation of where we are and how we got here, then I'm assuming you're not picking the best option. So maybe if there's a medical option to save my life that's the best one, how can I be certain you're going to pick the best option given this options?
Yeah, I get it. I think, and I'd love to hear John's thoughts on this. I think the question is not you're a bad picker. I think the observation is, in this realm, you don't have the tools to make a wise choice. But it is realm specific. I am a pretty darn good lawyer. I'm a pretty good project manager for software development. Those are the two things I've done in my life, right? I can make pretty good decisions when it comes to advising clients on legal issues, specifically with respect to FDA regulatory law, which is my background. Like, I'd say expert there. Software development, project management, pretty good at that too, right? As far as me making a good choice on the best way to reroute some waterways to get better irrigation to a tribe in Africa, I have no freaking clue. And maybe I'd go with my gut. Maybe I'd go with what makes sense, or maybe I'd turn and ask people. But those are different domains. And yeah, they'd be really bad. I wouldn't want my doctor teaching me how to play piano. I would want my doctor knowing how to cure my cancer or fix my broken arm. What are your thoughts, John?
Well, I think that being cognizant of, false authorities, people that are presenting themselves as authorities in a certain area, but they don't really have the expertise to, give informed opinions in that particular area. You find this a lot in creationism. Creationism, you have a lot of people that are not pretending to have expertise, but they claim to have expertise in an area of evolutionary biology, but they don't really, have that expertise there. And so I think that being cognizant of that is very important. Another important thing is that I would not hastily generalize people based on just being religious in general. Because like I said before, religious people, especially those that have been indoctrinated into faith early and have stuck with it, are great at compartmentalization. So like if you could be religious and still be like one of the smartest people in the room. And I mean, I'm fairly certain that like a lot of doctors that I've seen in the past have definitely been religious in some kind of way. But the thing that you want to focus on is making sure that they do not interject their religious beliefs into their care for you, or inserting their religious beliefs into some kind of advice that they're giving you that is not really applicable to what you're seeing them for. Unless you're seeing a priest specifically about religious theology, then you don't need to hear that from somebody. Yeah. It would be a Saturday Night Live skit for you to go into the urgent care clinic with a sore throat and for the doctor to walk in and say, have you tried praying? Like as the first thing. Like that's not what happens. We don't see that. And if you did, you would probably be rightfully positioned to file some sort of complaint with their local medical ethics board, right? There are standards of care and you need to meet them. Otherwise, you could be sued for negligence. So I think that thank you very much, Josh, for your call. I think that it's interesting. I don't understand I guess I get it a little bit. It reminds me of, I don't know if you saw this recently, John, the flat earthers, right? These flat earth people that appear to be able to walk upright, chew gum, hold a job, raise a family, but they seem, at least some of them, Poe's law applies here, but they seem to believe that the earth is flat. And then recently we had some people who had some resources to say, hey, we'll take 4 of you, the most prominent flat earthers, the first 4 to accept, on a trip down to
Antarctica, because you've all said on your various streams of media that if you could witness a sun that never sets, it would disprove flat earthism. And 4 of these leading flat earthers accepted, went down, set up 8 bajillion cameras looking at each other, all that sort of stuff. And sure enough, the sun never set. And one of them immediately said, that's it, I'm done. The flat earth is not flat. The next one said, wow, the sun never set. I don't know what that means. I leave that to you guys to figure out, but it's going to definitely cause me to go back to the drawing board, sort of implying that, well, I've got this preconceived notion, maybe there's an engineering solution to it. And then the other 2 sort of remain silent. And what happened in the flat earth community? Immediately, the first and second guy, you are shills. One of them's a pastor. So the other pastors in the flat earth community started calling him a pastor for Satan, like all sorts of horrible stuff because you dare question what's going on. Those people are just really bad at processing certain types of data, evidence that contradicts one of their firmly held beliefs. And that's sort of religion in a nutshell.
Yeah, one of them was actually Jeranism, he's a prominent YouTuber here that did do, or I guess maybe still does. I think he's still a flat earther. He just needs a new map. But he was also in the Netflix documentary Beyond the Curve.
Beyond the Curve, wonderful movie.
Yeah, that one was pretty famous for having Jaren at a pretty central focus in the movie. But at the very end, they ran another experiment where they were testing like the curvature of the Earth, right? And they set up this experiment. It's like, well, if we see the light, then the Earth is flat. If we don't see the light, then it's not. And it's like they ran the experiment. They didn't see the light. They actually had to hold the light up a little bit more. And Jaren's just like, huh. It is the
best closing line of any movie ever is, huh.